Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Yeah, it's something that I believe the majority of us deal with, and that is healing emotional wounds. We've all gone through things. You might not even realize it, right? That something has happened in the past. And then when they come up, you have to deal with them. Sometimes you're not really sure how to deal with them, or you're not even sure why they're coming up, and they're called triggers. We're going to talk with somebody today who helps a lot of people heal from that. From a psychological standpoint, she counsels people all the time. Ann Creekmore is back with us. Welcome back, Ann. How are you?
Good. How are you, Steve?
Very well. And this is a lot of insight which comes from your book, Love Yourself, Love Your Life. And we've been talking about your book recently in these podcasts. I believe this is chapter 3. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
I would have to imagine, if I was going to take a guess, or if I was a betting guy, that this is probably one of the more important chapters in your book for effectively emotionally navigating your life. Would you say so?
I agree. I agree completely, because it's like our subconscious or our unconscious beliefs really stem from these wounds, and then they're kind of directing us. We've talked about, the positive self-talk and how to catch a negative thought and change it to a positive thought in chapter 1, the self-fulfilling prophecy. And how to kind of look at your feelings and take a negative feeling and bring it into a positive, solid life solution, and not, just be disturbed by it, but take it to a relaxed place. But really, what happens if you're having, triggers, and you don't even really realize that the pain you're feeling is emotional pain from the past, and it's affecting, and it's being brought in kind of unconsciously, subconsciously into your current present, then those things will help and will help you get centered on the present. But if you can heal them, of course, and you're healing your wounds, you don't even have to deal with them, and you're at a place of inner peace coming from being able to really be present.
Do you find that a lot of people, Ann, don't know about the emotional wounds that they carry?
Absolutely, yes. Yes. And in fact, I think it was John Gray who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Very good book and on couples or just relationships. And I think he said that he thought like something like 90% of the conflicts that we get into, like a couple would get into, was related to some past trigger that was being brought into the present, rather than the little, 10% was related to the current, probably smaller incident that they're fighting about or having some conflict about. And people just keep focusing on the tip of the iceberg in that case, and not really understanding that there's just some emotional wounds from the past that are being triggered, and there's so much intense pain around it because of that needs to heal. But that can be good. I mean, we can come together and then be aware of our shadows, if you will. You call it, your inner, darker stuff that you hold in your limiting beliefs. And if you're open and you can dialogue and with your partner, and you can maybe get to what it is that's really deep, more at a deep level bothering you, instead of just bringing it into the present, trying to clear that little incident you're talking about at the time.
And this word trigger, I didn't even know it existed until about a year and a half ago. I was hanging with somebody, and she would turn into sometimes a different person emotionally.
Right.
And then we started talking about it. And then she started talking about her past relationships and describing some of the things that went on. And they weren't even, to the outside major. They really, they wasn't abuse or anything like that, but they were things that could bother somebody potentially. And that's when I first learned what the word trigger was, because she called them triggers. And I saw what can happen when these things pop up, and you get triggered. That's the best description.
Exactly. Right. And it happens all the time. Right. And
Yeah.
we, don't realize. And it was good that she could tell you, that she's having a trigger rather than just kind of start to project it out on you or the relationship or what you said or what you was going on, and to own it and be able to say, wait a minute, I'm feeling this, upset because of this is reminding me of this.
Right.
And then I'm feeling the pain about it at the moment. So it's good to be, to be aware of that and to be able to talk about it.
Yeah. And she and I we're not as close as we were, but we still connect. But I know she goes through those things it could be anything. It could be driving in a car and see a sign on a road or pass a store that maybe you went to with an ex or whatever. That could be a
Right.
trigger. Anything could be a trigger, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Because we really, it's often maybe even things that just get associated with something that happened that, like there was a stimuli in the environment at the time that whatever the trauma was going on happened. And then it kind of gets blended together. So even when that shows up, that could be a signal, to release, to trigger that pain and that memory.
How do you work with somebody healing these emotional wounds? Is it step one, you figure out where they started from and then work your way from there?
Well, usually what we try to do is stay in therapy as a therapist, kind of stay with the present, what a person is talking about, bothering them at the moment. Because, of course, the first step of therapy would be to help somebody get stable in their life, let them express about their problems of living and sort it out and try to bring things to a better, stable, satisfying place for them. But as they're doing that, a lot of times, it seems like that what the person is addressing may have some triggers to it. There may be things from their past that are also affecting them. I can give you an example this in my book. There was a client that came to me, and he was very upset because his wife had just gotten pregnant. He was very happy about that. Wasn't upset about that, but he used to work and then go bowling every night, and then when he got home she'd be available to him, and they'd have their quality time. And so of course she was in her first trimester and she's passing out early to go to bed because she's exhausted with all those hormonal changes of the first trimester, and she's not there. So he's feeling very, kind of upset with her about that. Which you would think, well, I mean, he could rationalize and say, well, look, she's pregnant and she's carrying his baby. They're getting a baby, so it's good for a good cause or something. But it really did upset him. But what it really was going on was that he was a child of an alcoholic, and his father had never really been available to him. In fact, he remembered one traumatic incident where he was just a new driver and he got stranded on the road. I don't know if the car broke down or what happened. And he called his dad, who said he was going to come and get him, because he's out where he doesn't know where he is, a new driver. And his father didn't even show up, because, maybe he was drinking or whatever happened. And so this was getting triggered. And so when she wasn't there in the place when he gets home and available, then all that pain about being a child of an alcoholic and being neglected and being abandoned was just very intensely brought up. And it was something then, of course, what you do is to kind of ask yourself what associations you're having. When you have feelings, you go below the anger, because anger is just the tip of the iceberg. Anger is more like a secondary emotion, not kind of a real emotion, really. Like it's just more giving you a clue that you need to find out what is bothering you. Like, are you feeling sad about something, hurt, disappointed, rejected, loss? Are you feeling anxious, overwhelmed or anxious or ill at ease or apprehensive about, worried about something? You got to kind of dig a little below and ask yourself, what's below my anger? And then get to those feelings. Well, in that case, he was feeling rejected. rejected and abandoned, even, even though she was right in bed there. She hadn't gone anywhere, but he felt all that pain. So it was a bit much for what the situation was. And when you realize that maybe, this is a little intense for the current, conflict or incident that's occurring, you can ask yourself, well, what associations do I have to this? Like, when did I feel this way before, like growing up or in relationship? And, kind of after you identified what the underlying feeling, like the rejection is, like, well, what does this feel like to me? And then it's like, wow, that reminds me of that time when, I'm stranded at night, and my car's broken and my dad's not coming, and didn't come many times. And it's all that pain being brought up. And then you can release the pain, you can talk about it. You can let the, vent, get it out, have someone to talk to, like in therapy or your partner, whatever, and do some grief work with it where you're, release the pain and maybe cry. And each time you cry, you get lighter. There's like 90 toxins in sad tears compared to 10 in happy. So you're cleansing emotionally, physically, you're just getting out of your system to the point where you get to the phase of acceptance, where you start to feel some peace, some acceptance around what happened. And then some good things come in, memories or things you learned, and you can kind of have worked it through. And that's kind of a simplified version of it, because there's more to, working with the trauma and other forms of therapy to work with trauma, which I'll be happy to talk about later. And but that's basically it, to kind of go within and say, wait a minute, what is this triggering for me? What's this past pain? And try to identify it.
I love what you said about tears, because I think they're underrated. Like our society is so conditioning to hide your tears, hold them back. But
Right.
it's not about letting people see your tears. That's maybe one aspect, but it's the release. It's the chemical release.
Exactly. You got it. Correct.
And I'm going to be blunt here. Yes, it sucks while you're crying sometimes. It's just like, you just don't want to do it. It hurts. But then after it's done, it's like, oh, I feel better now.
Exactly. Right. Yes. So you're bringing yourself, feelings will pass. So if you stick with your feelings and you work them through, then you get to a better place. So it's worth it, even though it hurts to do it while you're doing it. But it's better than staying, like say at a previous phase in grief, anger, where you're just always angry. And then you never get to feel that peace. You just kind of obsess over it or get angry about it or feel guilty about something. So just being able to let yourself have your feelings, get the support, heal, understand where it's coming from, and then eventually get to a place of, oh, okay, this happened, this is where I'm at, and now I'm ready to rebuild and where do I want to go.
So what's the first step for somebody? Let's say they do identify that something is bothering them. Let's say it's a past relationship.
Yes.
Let's say it's their childhood. And now they thought about it and said, wait a minute, you know what? I was bullied. That's why I have low self-esteem. I call it connecting the dots. They've connected the dots between a situation and now. What's the first step when you work with somebody?
What's the first step of what? Like
in healing. In
healing?
Yeah.
Okay. And the first step would be when you feel, and this can be for anyone, because people have lots of defense mechanisms against the pain to keep going. And they have to kind of figure out their defense mechanisms to some degree. I can just give you a little funny story that I use as an analogy. When my son was little, I was going up the steps. He was sitting in his little carrier seat on the floor. He's a real young baby. And then I was going up the steps and I heard him scream. And so I was going up the steps trying to put something in the linen closet. I was almost there. So I just threw it. And then I went down the steps to see what was going on. Well, he was sitting there watching his Barney show, right? And he just kind of, his little curious, he just kind of tipped over and he was holding himself with one arm. He was always a little athletic. He just cocked his head and was continuing to watch his show, right? while he held himself up, a little soft addiction already starting TV. But so I righted him up. He was totally fine. But I kind of use that as an analogy that what happens is we develop these defense mechanisms against our pain, and because all the stuff in our psyche, if you will, are invisible, that we don't know it. Like I could tell that he needed me to put him back up, right? But parents can't look at their children and notice that they made a correction or an adjustment, a defense against some pain, if it's invisible in their mind. So we learn these maladaptive patterns, and they're stuck with, we're kind of stuck with them until you get into therapy, and then it's like kind of unraveling it, but it's a lot of invisible, talking and trying to sort it out. It's a kind of thing where you've got to kind of be aware of what defense mechanisms people do use, and they may use different ones. I'm jumping a little ahead in my book, but some people who are under the age of 8, if they experience kind of a chronic trauma, will just develop they use dissociation as a defense mechanism. Dissociation is kind of like if you're an intelligent, creative child and you're under this chronic stress, this chronic, even doing a child of an alcoholic or whatever, you may learn you can self-hypnotize. You can mentally kind of go away and then let another part of your brain handle that trauma. And then when it's over, you kind of put amnesia walls around it, kind of it's like self-hypnosis in a way, because children are so imaginative and creative, you can just kind of go away. Now they can come out and go play and go, do what you do and not even think about that. For example, I can give you a horrible example, but say a child coming home from school knowing her father would sexually abuse her each night, and that would be really hard. You'd have to have like a nervous breakdown, or you'd have to be mentally creative enough to go away and, and just put that in a pocket somewhere where you don't know it exists. You've dissociated from it. So some people use what's called as repression, which is they may push down, to the subconscious memories that are upsetting to them, one mind. But some people actually have, if it's been occurring kind of chronically, the trauma before age 8, may have actually developed a dissociative mechanism where they're now in different compartments, because every time, once a child learns to dissociate, and they only just usually dissociate if they don't feel that there's anyone there really to protect them. If they feel that one of the caretakers will help them at times, or they're going to get them out, they won't. But if they're at the point of that nervous breakdown, I'm in this, there's no help, I'm getting out of here, I'm out of Dodge, mentally escaping, self-hypnotizing, that they will develop kind of dissociative disorders, which is much more prevalent really than most people think. I mean, not the 1 in 100, multiple personality disorder it used to be called, where you got blackouts completely between alters. But plenty of people do shift between moods. They can shift between modes. It looks like moods, modes, parts. Anyone that has been through that kind of stuff may have used dissociation. So they kind of their triggers come up in a kind of a blended, isolated compartment fashion that holds still the old memories exactly, or the old perspective. So internal family systems therapy is a form of therapy that's very specific for that, where you go and you're helping them to. And you can even look that up. There's videos, YouTube, some therapy sessions on that, where you can look at that. But if you were dealing with someone who doesn't have the dissociation, because not everyone does have dissociation, but a lot more people than we realize have it, not a full-blown, what they think of as the multiple personality disorder, but just having used dissociation, that the main thing is to help them to, if they feel blended, they feel they're in another mode of themselves, to just go there with that part and help that part heal what happened and help them get up to the present where they can see, well, wait a minute, yes, you were unprotected in this situation where you're being abused as a child, but let's look through your eyes here and look, you're a grown woman now, or a grown man, you drive a car, you're not stuck, you're not going home to somebody, you don't have to, you can be up, you can make another choice now. You have certain defenses, like say I'd left my son sitting there, which of course I wouldn't sit in the carrier seat. He really would have gotten tight, would have built a big muscle holding himself up there, but he was having a neck problem probably. But what I'm saying is these are, at a psychological level, these people are left like that. And they're in that maladaptive state that they have to be righted up to.
So I have lots of questions and I don't want to run out of time. And I'm glad you started.
You go right ahead. I talked and I apologize for that.
No. It's great insight. And what you're talking about, I think, is so impactful. So let's move it to an adult. Some people, and I do this sometimes when things just get to me emotionally and I don't want to deal with them. I call it the emotional file cabinet. Got one sitting right here in my mind. It's like I throw it in the file cabinet, close the door, and don't deal with it at that time.
Right.
Is that a bad thing to just move it, aside for the moment? Yes, the file cabinet, or sometimes you can call it the emotional bucket, can get overfilled and then overflow. But is it, I don't want to say it's a disassociation, but maybe it's a temporary disconnect. Is that a bad thing?
Yes. I mean, and some people do, dissociation is used in other ways besides as a early primary defense mechanism. And dissociation, people can think of that as like, well, I'm going to go watch TV, or I'm going to go read a book. In a sense, that's a healthy, adaptive form of dissociation. And so, I guess in my opinion, from what you're asking me, is that I think that, it's a good thing to just put things in their place, and to come, as long as it's there and you haven't put an amnesia wall around it and you don't know it's there. And then that's going to pop out at some point that looks like, oh, this was in my environment then, now it's in my environment. Now I'm in this, that needs some therapy.
Well, okay. Then let me clarify it even closer in the example I gave. It's, for many people, and I was one of those, that things would bother me. Like something comes up and I'd be like, how am I going to deal with that? And I got to the point in my journey where it's like, deal with it. It'll be okay.
Right.
Almost like slightly desensitize. And maybe that's to an acceptable level where previously it was like, oh, things, this popped up. Oh, how am I going to deal with that? What about that over there? Now it's just like, all right, it's going to be okay. We'll figure it all out.
I think now that's a great use of positive self-talk. It's soothing yourself to reduce your anxiety or your anger, whatever you're feeling.
Doesn't always work, though. I'll tell you that.
But at least you try and you have that coping skill, and that's a good coping skill, right?
Yeah. But there are going to be triggers. I think till the end of your days, there will be triggers for whatever they are. And I don't care who you are. There's probably some that can, for lack of a better description, set you off in a emotional state. What does set you off mean? It can make you sad. It could make you cry. It could make you angry. Whatever it is, it's a button that gets pushed somehow. Something comes up, and
exactly,
you got to deal with it.
And it made me think too of when you said that sometimes all these triggers, sometimes these triggers are, they're always up for healing. So if you can take the time and process them, but sometimes we get triggered by people because that our shadow, if we will, or our little darker side of ourselves, we're seeing in another person what we kind of feel bad about that we do. And so they're annoying us because it's triggering that we feel that we do that. And
wow.
Yeah.
We're out of time, but you just opened we dove down a rabbit hole here. I think is so interesting and impactful because you're seeing the mirror of yourself.
Exactly.
That can make you angry. You might not even know it's going on.
Exactly. So that's another little exercise to do, to say, wait a minute, what is it that's specifically bothering me? And maybe it's somebody telling us that this is something we want to work on in ourselves. Do we do that? Yeah.
How do we work with you, Ann? How do we connect with you?
Yes. You can always, if you want to learn more about me, I'm a practicing licensed clinical psychologist in Virginia, and you can go to my website, Psychologist, plural, in Virginia, spelled out.com, if you want to, and phone numbers and things would be on there as well. And you can always, I just kind of have my website from a nonprofit that I ran a while back, the Love Your Life Healing Center. At outlook.com. That would be a place to email me.
And everything we're talking about, the majority of it is in your book, Love Yourself, Love Your Life. A.P. Filosa is the name that the book is written by you. Your maiden name, correct?
My maiden name, correct.
Gotcha. Yeah. And we can find that on Amazon and just do a search for it there, right?
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah. And a lot of good stuff today. A lot of real stuff. And whether we want to admit it or not, a lot of relatable stuff.
Yes, absolutely. We're all human, right?
We're all human. Yeah.
Well, what's normal? This is normal.
It is. You know what? It is normal. It's time for us to get that out there. It is normal. Thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.